A rookie driver white knuckles his way down a mountain grade, riding the brakes the entire descent, while a 40-year veteran in the truck behind him rolls past like it's nothing, and the gap between them has almost nothing to do with confidence. Somewhere underneath that trailer sits a piece of engineering most drivers walk past for their entire careers without ever really understanding. One that turns a routine blowout into a controlled stop for one driver and a genuine emergency for another. If you think 18 tires on a semi is just how trucks look, wait until you hear what a veteran's hands and ears already know about them before his brain even catches up. And if the hidden engineering behind the trucking industry is your kind of rabbit hole, stick around and subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel digs into. So tell me in the comments, have you ever felt a tire go on the road, and how did you know? What actually happens in the split second after a tire blows at highway speed? And why are some fleets walking away from the fuel savings of newer tire setups instead of chasing them? Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're starting out. Every semi you've ever seen has 2 tires mounted side by side on each end of the rear axles. 16 tires on the back, 2 more up front steering, and that's exactly where the name 18-wheeler comes from. Most rookies learn that fact in their first week of training and then never think about it again. Veterans think about it every single day, because they know those paired tires aren't just there to look tough. They're the difference between a bad moment and a catastrophe. Let's start with why they exist at all, because understanding the reason is what separates the guy who respects his equipment from the guy who's just driving it. A fully loaded rig in the United States can gross up to 80,000 pounds. That's an enormous amount of weight pressing down through a relatively small contact area with the road. Federal weight rules cap what a single axle can legally carry, and a tandem axle group has its own separate limit. Those numbers exist because roads and bridges take a beating from concentrated weight, and regulators decided decades ago that spreading the load was the only sane way to let trucks carry real freight without tearing the pavement apart. So the engineering answer was simple on paper. Take the weight that would otherwise sit on one tire and split it across 2. Ground pressure drops. The tire's individual load rating stays within safe limits. Everyone goes home. But a rookie hears that explanation once, nods, and moves on to worrying about backing into a dock. A veteran carries that knowledge with him every mile because he's internalized something the rookie hasn't yet, which is that dual wheels aren't just a weight distribution trick. They're a redundancy system. And redundancy only matters the day something fails. Think about what actually happens when a single tire blows at highway speed. It's not a question of if this happens over a long enough career, it's a question of when. Every experienced driver has a story, usually more than one. On a dual setup, when one tire lets go completely, the second tire on that same axle end is still there, still inflated, still carrying the load. The driver feels a vibration, the handling shifts a little, but the truck doesn't drop onto bare metal. It doesn't lurch violently into the next lane, and the driver has time, real time, to ease off the throttle and find a safe place to pull over. That window of time is the entire ball game. A veteran knows exactly what that vibration feels like the moment it happens because he's felt it before, sometimes more than once, and his hands already know what to do before his brain is finished processing it. A rookie who's never experienced it can freeze for a half second too long, and on a loaded rig at 70 miles an hour, a half second is not nothing. Now here's where the story gets more interesting, because the industry hasn't stood still on this. In recent years, wide-base single tires, often just called super singles, have shown up as an alternative to the classic dual setup. One wide tire replacing a pair. The pitch is real, and it's not nonsense. Less rolling resistance means measurable fuel savings, and shaving off the weight of a second tire and wheel per position adds up to real payload capacity across a fleet. For a company running hundreds of trucks, that's genuine money. A rookie looking at a spec sheet sees fuel economy numbers and thinks it's an obvious upgrade. A 40-year veteran looks at the same spec sheet and asks a different question entirely. What happens when that one tire fails instead of 2? Because on a super single, there's no backup tire quietly picking up the slack. When it goes, the whole corner drops, all at once, with the full weight of a loaded trailer pushing from behind. That's not a theoretical concern old-timers invented to feel superior to new equipment. It's exactly why so many fleets running long, high-speed interstate miles have stuck with duals, even as the fuel numbers on paper look tempting, while regional and urban operations with shorter, slower routes have been quicker to adopt the single-tire setup. This is the part rookies genuinely don't get taught properly, and it's not really their fault. Training programs are built around getting a new driver licensed and moving freight as fast as possible, not around teaching the philosophy of why the equipment is built the way it is. So a new driver learns to do a pre-trip inspection because he's told to, checking tread depth and looking for obvious damage, ticking boxes on a form. A veteran does the exact same walk-around, but he's not ticking boxes. He's running his hand along the inner tire on every dual pair, because that's the tire nobody can see from a casual glance. And it's also the one that quietly loses air first when there's a slow leak nobody's noticed yet. He's listening for the subtle difference in tone when he thumps a tire with a bar, because a properly inflated tire and an underinflated one don't sound the same, and his ears have had decades to learn the difference. Rookies check what's visible. Veterans check what's hiding. There's also a piece of history behind all this that most drivers, rookie or otherwise, never hear about, and it explains why American trucks look the way they do underneath. Regulations shaped this whole system long before any individual driver ever climbed into a cab. Weight limits on individual axles and axle groups pushed manufacturers towards spreading load across more tires rather than concentrating it. And a national bridge formula, the calculation that ties how much weight you're allowed to carry to how far apart your axles are spaced, reinforced the same basic idea from a completely different angle. None of this happened because some engineer in Detroit had a creative flash of inspiration. It happened because roads were getting torn up, bridges were taking damage they weren't designed for, and lawmakers stepped in with hard numbers. The dual-wheel setup that shows up on every serious long-haul rig today is really the settled answer to a decades-long argument between what trucks needed to haul and what infrastructure could actually survive. A rookie sees 16 tires on the back of a truck and thinks it's just how trucks look. A veteran sees the entire regulatory history of American infrastructure sitting quietly underneath the trailer. And this is really where the 40-year knowledge separates itself from the 2-year knowledge. It's not a single fact. It's not one trick you can write on an index card and hand to somebody. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small observations that only come from having lived through the failure, or having a close call, or having a mentor who lived through it and passed the story down. It's knowing which sound means pull over now, and which sound means keep an eye on it for the next 50 miles. It's understanding that the extra second of redundancy a dual pair buys you isn't a minor convenience. It's the entire reason a blown tire on a mountain descent turns into an inconvenient roadside stop instead of a headline. It's respecting that every wheel position on that truck was decided by an argument between physics, economics, and government regulation that started before most current drivers were even born. And that argument is still quietly playing out every time a fleet manager decides between duals and super singles for the next order. None of this makes a rookie a bad driver. Everybody starts as a rookie. The difference is what you do with the miles once you've got them. The drivers who spend 40 years on the road and actually absorb what those miles are teaching them end up developing something that looks almost like instinct, but is really just pattern recognition built one incident, one near miss, and one mentor's warning at a time. The equipment hasn't fundamentally changed in decades. What's changed, generation after generation, is how much of that inherited knowledge actually gets passed down before a rookie has to learn it the hard way instead. So the next time you're sitting at a light next to a loaded rig, take a second look at those rear wheels. There's a weight limit fight, a bridge formula, a blowout redundancy system, and about a century of hard-earned trucking wisdom packed into that simple-looking pair of tires. Most people never think twice about it. The drivers who've been doing this for decades think about it every single day, whether they realize it or not. And that quiet, almost automatic respect for the machine underneath them is exactly what keeps them rolling long after the rookies have moved on to something else.